Thanks for coming to listen to us. My name is Ryan Moss. I'm the director at the department at the University of Minnesota, Gopher Digital Productions.
My name is Josh Blessing, and I'm a senior producer.
Daniel Claxton, creative director.
And I'm Cole Mayer. I'm the live production assistant.
And so our presentation is going to be a little more, I would say, typical. Other than Cole, the three of us primarily work on content. We don't do a lot of the technical stuff. Our live broadcast people couldn't make it to this event. So any of your technical questions we may or may not be able to answer. But we do a lot of the planning for game day for football and all the other sports at the University of Minnesota. And we work very closely with our marketing department. They've recently changed their name to Fan Development. That seems to be the trend. But any of those kind of questions, I think we can hopefully answer. So it'll be a relatively short presentation. So again, if you have questions or you want to chime in or you want to stop us, we are more than happy to do that. We have a couple of videos that'll play during the event as well. So the theme of our presentation, we're just going to kind of go over, in general, our timeline for producing football games at the University of Minnesota. So we play at TCF Bank Stadium, right downtown Minneapolis. It's a 50,000 fan stadium, opened in 2009. The video board, when it was installed in 2009, was, I believe, the third largest in college football. It has since dropped into the 30s, I believe, which isn't terribly surprising. But football for us, and as it is for a lot of Power 5 schools, is a year-round event. The season never really stops, and we work on it pretty much the entire year, even as other sports are going on. So we kind of see here, we'll really get things ramping up in probably February, March. Like I mentioned, we work really closely with our marketing team at the University of Minnesota. We recently had a lot of turnover on that team. Dennis from Florida can attest to this. A couple of our people left for other schools. We were without much of our marketing department for a better chunk of 2016. And so myself, Daniel, and Josh kind of served as the de facto marketing department for our department for a good chunk of that year, especially as it came to game presentation. So it allowed us to kind of take a lot of chances and do a lot of things that we wanted to do. Partially just by default, there was no one else to do it. So one of the things that we will do in the early part of the year is sit down as a staff. So that's our production staff. Daniel's our game day director. Josh produces a lot of our content with our marketing department and say, what elements worked from game day last year? What did we like? What did we not like? What are we definitely going to throw out? What are we definitely going to change? What do we love? What do we always wanted to do that we should do? This should be the year that we do it. And so that could be a very informal setting. It could be something a little more structured, but it's really just to get those juices flowing. That's something that we try to do very early on in the year. Anything you guys would want to add?
No, I would just say, very early on we had a list of what worked. So if we go back 2 years, we did a lot of unsponsored features. And, this past, in February, early last year, we went through and was like, all right, what can we realistically get sponsored? Because we did a lot of stuff that wasn't sponsored last year or 2 years ago. And it's a lot of work when it's not bringing in any money. When we did a feature where we're traveling all over the Twin Cities, taking players back, to their home high schools, micing them, did a whole day or two worth of each player. And, that's 2 days worth of us traveling on the road for 7 features in game. And after that, we're like, not sponsored, not doing it. Like it was a lot of work. So that's kind of where we list a hierarchy of what's worth it and what's not.
Are you guys in-house sponsored also, or do you use IMG?
We're a Learfield school, actually. And so I'll kind of come to this later, but Minneapolis-St. Paul is, the 13th largest metropolitan area in the country, and we have 17 Fortune 500 companies within our area. And so our sales team is large, and they sell a lot of stuff. And it's up to us to integrate it and to facilitate it, to make it happen. So it's a huge source of revenue for our department.
When you said that you produced a lot of unsponsored features for football, specifically because Minnesota football is big, how did you have, with Learfield in Minneapolis, everything you just said, how did you have time to play unsponsored stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was one of those things we kind of put the cart before the horse a little bit, I would say. We we've kind of gone over this ebb and flow over the course of several years where our games have kind of gone from we have way too much sponsored content, we are just packing this thing in, to we had a massive pushback about 3 years ago, eliminated a lot of in-game content and said, hey, this doesn't fit our brand, we're not going to do this. And, we kind of ended up on the other end of the spectrum a little bit where we had some empty spots in our game. And so we're like, okay, we should fill some of this with content that we want to do. That's features that we think will be engaging for fans and for, our team and just making the game more entertaining. And we took a lot of it on, and as Josh mentioned, maybe it was a little bit too much. And so we kind of dialed it back again in 2016. So I'm sure that's a process that a lot of schools will undergo, and we kind of went from one extreme to the other, and we kind of drew the line like, hey, and we'll have a couple of examples here too of some really, we think, engaging in-game content that we were able to attach sponsors to, rather than have the sponsors dictate the content that we were going to produce for them. So that was a big shift that we made, and I think it's definitely taking root in the industry where, we have the talented, producers, we have great ideas, we think, and the stuff that our sponsor team was trying to pitch to us or trying to sell to clients wasn't very good or engaging. And so hey, let us do it, we think it's good, your sponsors will like it too. And it kind of worked out, so. We kind of, I'll show you an example of a piece of sponsored content here that the idea for that came from within our department. We sat down in one of these meetings in the spring, and we're like, hey, what if we did this feature? And it's something that we've wanted to do for several years, actually, and we're like, we could actually pull this off. We pitched it to our internal sponsorship team and said, hey, we want to do this feature. Here's what we think it's going to look like. Who do you think would be interested in being a part of this? And it was actually one of the success stories because it did actually come to fruition, and we did 7 different features. So, Josh, you want to explain before we play this?
Yeah. So what I mentioned earlier, where we, 2 years ago, we're doing all kinds of unsponsored content. This was an example where it ended up being sponsored this past year. So 2 years ago, we did we mic'd up a coach pregame, be offensive line one week, and the next Saturday it's defensive line coach. Throw a mic on them, and I would be up in the control room, and I cut it day of. We have a shooter go shoot it, cut it up pregame. It goes out into the second quarter or start of third. So I'm in the midst of cutting game highlights and all the other stuff we do. I'm trying to turn this around. It's a minute, maybe 45 seconds, minute long. So that was the unsponsored. Then it turns into this. We put a lot more resources on it. We had our again. We planned all of this the summer prior. We were like, all right, how are we going to pull this off? We brought in an audio engineer, which is not something we had, expected to do. But we brought in a legit audio engineer, and then we had one of our shooters shoot it with our FS7. We had a boom mic with our audio guys. So we had 3 people on this feature alone. They shoot it, bring it up to me as fast as possible. I cut it as fast as possible, and then play it right from my timeline up in the control room. So
It's called Sights and Sounds. It's not a particularly novel idea, but the fact that we were able to turn this around from footage shot probably 45 minutes prior, if that, and then play it during the second quarter, we thought was kind of a cool little nugget for our fans. So go ahead, Jason.
You got butt down, chest up, good squat, good squat. Good work, man, good work. Hey, I'm ready, hey. Get a little swag going here, play fast, keep your pads down, don't be blocked. Play the way you're capable of playing. Move your feet, get your pad level down, stay on your combination, get movement, and you dominate this line of good. Make a choice. Play now.
So yeah, it was really great content, added to the in-game element, and we actually liked it so much that we ended up using it in a post-game email blast, as soon as the game was over, because it was this kind of cool look into game day that the game you maybe watched on TV or watched in the stadium, and then you could watch it right from your phone in your inbox. So.
Did you play that win or lose?
Yep, because we played it early in the game before the score was
maybe
decided.
second break, third quarter, every single game. I knew I had to have it. I knew I had to have it cut by the start of the third. And you notice some of these games, I was cutting it almost like, because we didn't know how we were going to do it. So I tried to get it done as fast as possible. I had it done at the end of the first, or halfway through the first. But you can see we started to wait a little bit longer. Give me 10 more minutes to cut this. Go through more footage. And now you can see like the end game stuff where we actually have a coach yelling. And so we got a little bit more risky with it because I was comfortable enough. I knew how much time I had. So then we started adding the end game stuff too when our guy was in the box. And then it started being like end of the first. Then I would get it. So then it was a little bit more crunch time, but it was worth it because it's more than just pregame.
And the idea was that this was an item that we, thought of in the spring, brought to the team in the early, later in the spring, said, hey, can you pitch this? Could we sell this? They're like, yeah, we think we can. We got the sponsor attached, we got the workflow in place, and we made it happen on game day. So kind of one of the success
The good
stories.
thing about this feature is we were going to shoot this footage anyway, so like to tag on a sponsor, it made complete sense. Like we're already going to be doing it. Might as well tag on the sponsor. Like,
Exactly.
You guys might have mentioned this already. You guys had one of the coaches' mics.
That was 2 years prior.
No, we used a boom for all this.
We used the boom. That's what we brought in, an audio guy that was actually, mixing it, and then we had a student sometimes.
Yeah, we had a
It
couple
took a
guys
while
shoot
to
it.
figure out, like, you have a student running a boom, they're kind of hesitant, they don't want to get yelled at by a coach. So we tried it once, then we switched out that boom guy, and we had a guy that just, go as close as you can, get yelled at, back up. So by like the second or third game, we had it figured out,
Yeah.
and it turned out really well. So like that was a boom mic.
Go ahead.
What was the exact workflow as far as like
Yeah.
a shooter and the audio guy who give you a tip like, hey, I got good sound on like this clip?
This one was we don't have like our FS7 is not integrated into our game day workflow as far as like ingest. So this was like a card running thing where we had audio guy, wirelessly connected to a guy running FS7. We got a card runner. They dump the card on a server. Text or whatever. Josh up in the control room. We have like an edit station up there. He's ready to go. He's that was his job on game day, was to cut live features. So it was a little bit complicated and maybe not ideal, but it was the best that we could come up with.
You said you ran it wirelessly.
Yep.
Do you have any issues with the wireless frequency in there?
Not usually. We have like a frequency coordinator on site for every game, so they just this is the frequency you get.
That's what we hired. We outsourced
Yeah,
a
we hired like a
legit
TV
audio guy, and he mixed it all, and it sounded fine. That's all, and kind of just trusted him.
Yep. Go ahead.
Being that you guys were able to turn around that quick, was there any kind of an approval process? Did anybody need it? Did they just trust you to?
We were lucky that we did have a level of trust.
There was some stuff I knew not
Yeah.
to use. When you're in the huddle, that was a 12-second soundbite from a lot of stuff that coach was saying on the sidelines that we obviously couldn't use, and it's basically just me. They're like, all right, is it ready? I play it out,
So
and it goes.
we had a very unique situation in that we had a very trusting coaching staff. And we had worked with them, and we had built that level of trust over several years, and so they did trust us. We have a new coaching staff this year, so we're kind of starting over on that end. So it's maybe something we don't get to do. We'll see. But having proof of concept is huge for a sponsor and hopefully huge for the team as well when they see it. So
With your new coach this year, which is awesome for you guys, he's all in for this stuff.
oh yeah, hopefully we think. So we haven't pitched this one to him yet, but we will. All right. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about kind of our branding process. And again, I think this is something that a lot of the the Power 5 schools and even other schools too, hopefully you're already doing this. We have a very talented creative staff, but we strive to stay on brand with everything that we do, and that includes from an in-game perspective. So the creative process starts, in the spring sometime, just when the game presentation stuff starts as well. So we work very closely with we have a staff of creative services, graphic designers. What is our brand going to look like for football in, this season? What are some of the elements that we have to work with? So we rely on them to kind of create that initial look and give us some elements to play with, essentially. So we have here examples of, in the top corner is our game poster for football. Bottom left is a Facebook graphic. And then in the bottom right, and Jason maybe hover over it, that's actually an animated headshot that we can play So you can kind of see how Daniel, and he can talk about this, took some of those elements and used them to create the in-game look for headshots. So everything looks consistent. Everything looks, on brand, on point. And, we take that very seriously. We're not creating designs from scratch to use. We are following the brand guidelines that our department has set.
Yeah, I mean, we try and do our best to repurpose everything. Like, we get the poster, we get, one creative look, and we just build out the entire show from the poster as well as we can, template the stuff for our students, and, go from there. So try to keep on brand as much as possible, build out as much as we can, keep that look, and just do that.
It's not just with the stills, it's with our video stuff too. A lot of our in-game stuff had the same hash mark, yard markers, whatever you want to call them. All of our videos, I branded all of that, all the same, all textures, that maroon type look. Videos did the same thing, they had that same look.
How large is your graphic staff there at Minnesota? And do y'all have much say the design of the poster, like with them?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all work close together. The creative services staff is what, 3 or 4 people?
Yeah.
So we'll all meet in the off season. We'll figure out what we like, what looks good, what we want to do, and we'll go from there. So we're working closely with them. We're all doing the same thing. So they'll come with the idea, or we'll all come up with the idea, and they'll put it on paper, and we'll take that and run with it. So. And
yeah, there'll be some give and take where the initial poster design maybe didn't quite have enough elements for Daniel to animate. It's like, hey, we could use a little bit more here to work with. And okay, what about this? Or I thought about putting this in there. And, the next group will be we can work with that. So.
Does your football staff have kind of a similar crew of you guys?
They aren't quite as staffed as some of the other larger schools, I would say, but they're kind of moving that direction. We're lucky that the creative staff that works directly with the football team is actually a part of our staff as well. So they report to us, which is really helpful, but it's only that way because we made it so. So, exactly. So, we know that's coming.
And then with Chris, we had our former intern last year moved over with football
Yep.
as well. So now basically PJ Fleck, our head coach, has got his own video guy, basically. And that he works underneath us, but it's all for PJ's content on social. So we still have that brand. We still talk with them daily.
Yep, that's important. That's important where they're not kind of off doing their own thing. And we're lucky that the staff recently changed over. So hey, this is how it's going to be. And he's like, okay, that's how it is. And so we're a little bit lucky in that way, I would say.
So everybody's using the same graphics package,
Mm-hmm.
no matter if it's PJ's guy, you guys,
Mm-hmm.
marketing, your social media team, everybody's using the same.
Yep, everybody's using the same. Stuff is tweaked, obviously, depending on the sport. PJ might have a slightly different look or some slightly different colors or different elements that are PJ specific, but they derive from the same initial designs.
When you guys meet with the football team to kind of talk about, team intro and just the overall campaign, do you guys kind of come up with the marketing campaign? And then sometimes I know at Washington they have their own kind of thing, and sometimes we kind of want to go a different direction.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the staff. Our staff before PJ, they kind of didn't really have as much of an identity, so they were kind of we're hey, here's what the identity we think it should be. Yeah, let's do it. Whereas our new staff kind of comes with their own preordained catchphrase. Everything is already there, and so we're hey, we're just going to run with this. It's better than anything that we could come up with ourselves. And to try to fight it and try to push something else down fans' throats would be unsuccessful. So it's we're just going to lean into it. All right. Next up, in the summertime, and this is what we're getting into now, and it's the same for a lot of people, is, we're just cranking on production stuff. Shooting intros, hypes, working on headshots, working on sponsored features, integrating new sponsors, taking out old ones, kind of doing the nitty gritty, trying to get everything ready for that first game in late August or September. We also, plan out our game day, who is doing what on game day. We have I think over 40 people working a typical football game, and that includes a lot of full-time staff, students. We employ a ton of freelancers in the Twin Cities area. We try to make sure that we're well-staffed for every football game. So it's a big undertaking. There's a lot going on. But yeah, the summertime is when we get it done. So this is actually a video on here. This is kind of a good example of a sponsor that came in kind of late. We have this headshot look. We're like, hey, how can we integrate this sponsor in a way that's unobtrusive, but still, gives them enough visibility. So you can there's no sound, you can kind of play.
Today's projected CarMax starting lineups for your University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. At kicker, a sophomore from Green Bay, Wisconsin, number 38, Emmett Carpenter.
This is our starting lineup.
At punter, a junior from Pace, Florida, number 18, Ryan Santoso.
So I thought that was a good example of a way that we were able to integrate a sponsor, use kind of these cool, catchy headshots that we had made, while still allowing the sponsor to get a lot of screen time. So, anything else you want to add to that one, Daniel? Pretty straightforward. All right. And then obviously, come September, it's game time. We'll be doing meetings all summer, refining the game, talking about what elements are already going to be included, not going to be included. We'll do a sponsor-only preview, probably 2 to 3 weeks before the season with our Learfield team, where they can preview as much of their sponsor content that is available. We probably produce about half of it, I would say. Would you say that's a pretty good estimate?
Yeah.
Probably about half, and the other half comes from other sources, whether that's Learfield's internal production team or an agency or the sponsor's own internal team. Well, they'll give us the elements and we'll run them. So we'll go through a preview 2 to 3 weeks beforehand to say, hey, here's what all your stuff looks like. What do you want to go back to your sponsors with? What do we want to tweak? Give them enough time to give some actual feedback that we can work on. And then a couple days before the game, we'll go through an entire game for ourselves, including sponsor and internal content. And we'll get the whole crew together, or as much as we can muster a couple days before, and go through the game.
How many opportunities do you give your sponsors to change content?
At least one, sometimes more. Depends on how high maintenance the sponsor is. So we're really lucky. Daniel produces a lot of that sponsor content in-house, and so he's pretty nimble and can kind of work on his feet, and probably gives them a little bit too much leeway. But
we've also built a pretty trusting relationship with Learfield. So if they give us the logo and tell us what they want, they trust us to build it and just put it on the board. And it's usually that easy. Thankfully, it's that easy. Sometimes it's not, but we've built that relationship and it's worked out well.
And you maybe heard Jack, the Learfield guy, talk yesterday. Minneapolis, we're kind of in a unique situation in that we have one of the best Learfield properties in the country. They recently won the award for best property in the country. They have a large team. They're very experienced. Their offices are just down the hall from ours, and so we see them every day. We think of them as just members of the department, and I think that really makes a big difference and really helps a lot. Whereas we know who they are, they take care of us, we take care of them, kind of a deal, and we're just really lucky that way. So, and it does pay off. We're able to, have some say and, do really good integrations, and they're able to sell more. And, on the other side, they'll, whether they give us some money for implementation or, putting good words with our administrators, it's definitely a mutually beneficial arrangement. So, yeah. And this is my last slide. In season, we do a ton of in-game content that is very specific to each game. We have 7 home games. Those are our 7 Saturdays to showcase our stadium, our team, our university. We will do, theme days. We work with our marketing team. Hey, what's today's theme? We'll do a lot of game-specific content, whether that's hype, whether that's centered around sponsors, or just something that's topical with the team or with players. Rivalries, things like that. We're lucky to have a ton of rivalries at Minnesota, a lot of cool rivalry trophies, so that gives us a lot of opportunities to do really cool content. And, being reactive to storylines that are taking place and also making some adjustments. And I have my example here with the slow-mo footage. Maybe Daniel can tell that story.
So I think one of our marketing guys, I think you went to an Ohio State game and saw that they did like a slow-mo montage pregame, and really liked that, and we tried to integrate that into our show, but we did it with our matchup graphic instead. Like in-game we would go to a slow-mo montage, and what happened, like the first game we had a lot of targeting calls, and we went to our matchup graphic video animation, and the fans were furious that we were showing footage from the previous year instead of the replays and doing that. So, we had to be reactive, and we changed out the graphics and changed the look of the matchup. And it didn't work out as planned, and we just had to change that.
Yeah, it's an example of just making a quick adjustment on the fly due to criticism.
I thought it looked cool, but
and this is actually an example of a game-specific hype video that Josh makes for every game. We tweak these for every single game. So that's just a little quick run out for our defense. We'll keep kind of the shell the same, but we'll insert new clips from the previous game every single time, and just to kind of keep it fresh, keep it moving, and show that, hey, this is a new experience when you come to each home game.
And again, 2 years ago, this wasn't sponsored. I was making this every single week, updating it every single week, just because it was fun and cool. 15 seconds, you can make that no problem. So somebody saw it. We ended up selling it. I did not know we didn't know if that was going to actually happen. And then last second, TCF comes to us and they want to put the bug on it. So perfect example of something that I created where non-sponsored, someone sees it last second, throw a bug and go with it. And so again, it was updated every single week. Same with offense. We did the same thing. I've created an offense and defense, updated every week.
And we have several elements like that we'll just try to keep fresh for every game. So,
real quick question. We do something a little similar to this, but my question is, do you play that just on the first run out?
Yep. First time offense goes out. Sometimes it's like we run out there. Sometimes timing wise, it's hit or miss sometimes. But for the most part, we kind of figure out after a while when we need to run it. And Daniel's able to figure it out.
Our band has some traditions, like when the offense runs out, they'll play some music. So sometimes we have to wait until the second play. Sometimes it's first play. Just depends on the game flow.
Just once a game.
Your question.
Given finite resources and a ton of stuff to do you guys experience any tension with regard to producing content for sponsors on behalf of Clearfield?
Oh yeah, it's a
with or without charge. How does that?
It's a constant give and take, and it's something that we're still figuring out as far as what is charged, what is not charged, how does that kind of work. Like I mentioned, our Learfield team is they're pretty good about understanding hey, this is and we try to be upfront with them, here's the amount of time that we can dedicate to this particular project. If that's okay with you, we'll do it. If that's not okay with you, then you have to find another avenue to make it happen. So there isn't a magic solution. It's just very much a give and take, and being upfront and communicating is the best solution that we've found so far.
Are there any challenges that you guys face with creating content like that or a crowd pump and coordinates with marketing and allowing the band enough time to play?
Oh yeah.
How do you work on that?
Go ahead. I mean, yeah, it's a constant give and take. We're lucky Daniel's the one that calls all of our football games, so it's been really helpful to have him as one of the primary content creators and then also the one who calls for each element. So he knows exactly, I know exactly how long this is. I know exactly what it sounds like, what it looks like, how I think it's going to affect the crowd and the flow of the game, rather than have, random marketing person that maybe has seen this video twice be like, yeah, let's play that. It's like, well, Daniel knows better. He knows well, it's actually, 25 seconds this week, and we probably don't have 25 seconds here. And so we've been able to integrate our unit into, the actual execution on game day, and that's actually made a really big difference. Yeah.
I was just going to say, like I said, it's nice to have him create some of these prompts. He knows exactly the timing of it. He knows exactly when the prompt's going to hit, so that he can call for a 6 or 7, second prompt, and he knows when it's going to run and how long it's going to run. And so then he's calling that, and day of, I'll take slow-mo footage from our 700. I get slow-mo from every single quarter, and I'm cutting it as fast as possible, and I'll tell him, hey, I have a 13, I got a prompt that hits at 13 seconds with his end tag or his prompt at the end, and he knows all of his obviously the graphics that he's creating. So I just in his ear, I'm like, hey, I got a prompt that hits at 10 seconds. We'll have 15, 20 seconds of music, on a defensive third down and 20 or whatever. So the timing is really nice to have him call those games because he knows how long those prompts go. And I tell him right away, hey, I got a 15-second prompt. Do you want it? Yes or no?
Yeah, Josh mentioned the position of in-game editor. We actually have 2 in-game editors, and all they do is cut features live in the game from just, a Mac Pro. And those have been really key. They allow us to be really nimble within the game itself and to really kind of tailor some of our content to that specific game, where it's like, as Josh mentioned, he can start cutting a prompt in the second quarter that's going to play, in the third. And it'll include great looks from that game that you're watching right now. And a lot of those elements, parts of it have already been pre-produced, whether that's a, player prompt at the end or some sort of graphics. So he's got that shell already built, and he's just filling in the gaps with some really cool stuff. Go ahead, sir.
For your replays in game, are you using some cameras from the trucks, or is it all here?
No, we share. I think we have
3 replay decks, Z plays. So we have 3 replay operators with 4 angles for each of those. So we do have truck give us a feed for some.
We have 4 cameras from the truck. Or 3?
Yeah, 4 or 5 cameras from the truck, depending on who's there, and then we have 7 cameras in house that are shooting as well, 8 cameras technically with our wireless as well. So
it's a lot. Go ahead.
What are you using to upload all those quick edited videos to your game presentation immediately? So what's the equipment?
We actually have it plugged in directly to the edit station, and we can play it right from Adobe Premiere. What's the connector called, Cole?
I don't know.
It's an AJA little adapter.
Yep.
It's pretty slick.
So you got to make sure it's rendered. I've had nightmare. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I don't think it's ever skipped. I don't think I've screwed it up too bad.
We've had some issues, but for the most part, it works really well.
Yeah, just
as long as it's rendered, plays well.
See the green on top, hit spacebar, and don't touch the keyboard. Because if I touch it, it freezes, and it's going to be super awkward. So, so it's day of, cutting it, and go.
It's a little risky, but...
No, not my stuff. Sometimes if we have issues with the other edit station, we'll have them... It's not playing from his timeline. We'll export it out and run it through.
We can do it. It just adds another...
It just takes
10
longer.
or 15 minutes.
Make sure it's rendered, trust the editors, and go with it. So that's what we do. It's a quick turnaround, but it adds for like a pretty legit in-game feel. It's not just highlights from last game.
Oh, go ahead.
Josh, so are you using some of the clips from the replay machine in the things you're editing live?
Yeah.
And so how are you sorting through all of those angles and that content so quickly?
I have a project that I started, I organized before the season even starts with, it ends up being by the end of the year, it's hundreds, if not like 1,000 elements of every single game, FS700 angle, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. So let's start like beginning of the first game last year. I had my Oregon State FS700, Z play 1, 2, 3, 4, a touchdown folder, sack folder. I had all organized, and I'm pulling our in-house stuff that has the radio calls attached. So I have my sequences I have like 12 sequences of prompt 1, 2, 3, 4, music cut, already ready to go. So I pull in those clips as our Z play guys are exporting that out. And I'll just time up the radio calls, which ones I want to do. And I know that 15 seconds, the beat of the song is going to hit, and that's when his graphic comes in. I have it all lined out, rendered. And so that's what I do. But I typically try to use just the radio calls from the Z-Play clips, and then I'll just use our cool cinematic footage. I'd rather use that, stuff that's 248 frames a second, 480 a second, that cinematic 1080 footage, rather than our 720 footage as well. So I'll use the radio calls from that, but I'll use the cinematic footage for that.
Go ahead.
Daniel, how did you end up calling the game as well as being creative director? Which was your job first?
Great question.
I don't know. I just done a lot of live production prior to this job, and we got to a point where our football marketing person didn't really have that much experience calling the games, and they didn't necessarily want to do it either. So we took that on, and we saw that as a really good opportunity for our department to like have that say and have that, you know, those capabilities to make those decisions on game day. So it just it just happened that way, and you know, I was really nervous to take that on, but it's worked out really well, and it's been really beneficial for us as a department, and also to like get our stuff out there, and you know, kind of have more of a say than maybe we normally would have. So, yeah.
And he called basketball games for several years as well. All right, last question, sorry.
Walk me through your FS7 operator's workflow for the day. So he's going out and shoots some tailgate, he's going out and shoots fan stuff. When is he coming back in to get you that additional load?
So say we got our one full-time person doing 700. We have several students running cards to me, so I'll tell the 700 guy, all right, go get some pregame stuff, and I'll turn a 15-second pregame prompt around as fast as possible, so we can run it in the first quarter. I already have that timeline ready to go with, you know, music or whatever. So pregame, give me a card before the game starts. In the first quarter, we have a student take his card, run it up to me, and actually we don't run it up to me. Put that quarter on the server. I bring it into my project, already organized. Every single quarter, I get new cinematic footage, and I just go through as fast as I can and do some cool edits. Sometimes if I have time, I'll throw it in After Effects, bring it back in to kind of stylize it a little bit. But for the most part, every single quarter, I'm getting a card from our 700 angle and using that cinematic footage.
He gets in the zone.
Oh, yeah, I'm just going at it. After a while, you kind of figure it. I've been doing it for a couple years now, so kind of figure out that workflow.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.